For this video, I really wanted to share some of my poetry favourites from my bookshelf. One of the biggest pieces of advice I could give to any aspiring poet is to read, read, read. Read other people's poetry as much as you are writing it. Reading other people's poems can help you discover new ways to use any different technique, new ways to write, new styles, new forms. It can inspire you to write about particular topics or how to use a particular mood or emotion, and it's honestly, I think, the most important thing. I think it's also important when you're reading other people's poems to think about why you like them. What is it about the techniques they've used, the words they've used, the orders they've put them in? Like, have they used rhyme in an unusual way? Have they really channeled a specific emotion? How does the poem make you feel? Because you can have a conversation with yourself about those things and then try and apply that to your own work. I just want to give a little bit of a warning. The poets and poems that I really enjoy and like to read are ones that explore uncomfortable truths sometimes about the world around us. So that means the poets and the books I'm about to share with you, some of them contain adult themes and explicit language. So if you need to, make sure you check with an adult before you pick up any of these books. Okay, so first up we have Warsan Cherie's Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth. So Warsan's poetry probably became the most famous when she collaborated with Beyonce on her Lemonade film. And what I really love about Warsan's poetry is how she's able to be so vulnerable and so honest and kind of like a figurative gut punch. Like when you read her poetry, she has such a mastery of imagery and language and word choices that she figuratively punches you in the gut and makes you feel so overwhelmed, upset, empowered. She writes a lot about journeys and trauma and her experiences of being a young Muslim Somali woman. And next up we have Salima Hill's Bunny. Now, what I like about Salima's work is she's able to write and pack in so much message and so much meaning into, like, at times 3-4 lines. And the other thing I really like about her work is how she, in her collections, she uses very similar images and similar metaphors across different poems, so it means that the poems almost have a conversation with each other. Next up we have Caroline Bird's In These Days of Prohibition. Caroline's work is, in equal parts, I would say, dark, humorous, and incredibly surreal. And I think what I love about her work especially is the way she really delves into the deep, surreal details and paints such powerful images that you need to read more than once to fully understand. So, like, I particularly like her work because it's kind of like a poetry workout. You get to read over it again and try and unpick these images and work out what oftentimes she has like a quite poignant and vulnerable, deeper meaning to her work. And it's really fulfilling to be able to experience that. Next up off the bookshelf is Citizen and American Lyric by Claudia Rankine. I would say that this collection is probably as much of a literary essay as it is a poetry collection. But what I really like about it is it's really innovative with its use of form and experimenting with style as well as just word choices. And particularly, again, very similar to Warsan Cherie's work, the way she writes using second person a lot of the time, she really captures what it means to be othered in society, particularly from her experiences as a black woman in America. And her work is really quite political and powerful, and it really shows us how the mindset of how someone like that is treated and really highlights that as an issue. One of my all-time favourites is Maya Angelou. She's probably a name you will have heard at some point in your life because she's often been called one of the greatest writers of our generation, our lifetime, and I think that's definitely a true statement in my eyes. Her work is really lyrical and dramatic, and she again really captures her own personal narratives in both a universal way and in a micro personal way of her experiences of racism, sexism. She writes a lot about gender and racial inequality, and I think she's like a staple read for anyone that's interested in writing poetry. And last up we have Let Them Eat Chaos by Kate Tempest. Kate Tempest is hands down one of the best performers I've ever had the pleasure of seeing live. She's got such a captivating, magical way of speaking and reading her work, and she plays really quite mixing like ancient traditions of storytelling and poetry and her use of like rhyme scheme and rhythm, and she blends that with some really big universal truths about the world today. So those are some of my favourite poets, but obviously there are hundreds and thousands of us out there, so my biggest piece of advice once again is to keep reading, and reading as much as you can and as many different poets as you can, because it will really help your own work too.